that failed to not be able to play today?
Um, about 5 o'clock.
Did you say that there was pain? How did that all kind of come to pass?
Just woke up with some stiffness and some soreness, and we like to see again. Like I always say, like how do you respond after a workout? For us, it's not the time to take a chance. We just really want to be cautious.
If there's any.
What is up, basketball family? Welcome back to Street Hoops, the only channel in the game that keeps it 100% raw and unfiltered, while the mainstream media is busy repeating corporate public relations scripts. I am your boy, Dre Fiver, and today, we're skipping the hype and diving straight into an absolute institutional crisis. What went down in Indianapolis on Wednesday night isn't just a regular sports story about a player resting an injury. If you look at the facts, the timelines, and the secret boardroom mechanics, this looks like an absolute corporate heist pulled on the most loyal fan base in women's basketball. There is a very specific, legally defined term in consumer protection law for the act of knowingly marketing a premium product, securing top-dollar payment, and then deliberately substituting an inferior version at the exact moment when the customer's ability to get a refund has completely expired. It is called bait-and-switch fraud. In any other regulated industry, this kind of behavior triggers immediate federal investigations, massive class action litigation, and executive-level firings. But on a Wednesday night in May 2026, the Indiana Fever front office apparently decided that pulling a bait-and-switch was just another smart operational tool to maximize their midweek stadium revenue. We are conducting a full, documented, evidence-based autopsy of what is rapidly becoming the most toxic front office scandal of the entire 2026 WNBA season. We are not here to speculate or guess. We are placing the Indiana Fever's own physical actions, their contradictory public statements, and their blatant failure to comply with mandatory league reporting requirements right next to the explicit language of the WNBA collective bargaining agreement. If you have been consuming the mainstream media's version of why Caitlin Clark was missing from the lineup against the expansion Portland Fire, you have been fed a completely manufactured narrative. They want you to believe this was just a simple case of back management, precautionary rest, and responsible long-term athlete care. But we are going to dismantle that lie piece by piece, starting with the exact rules that this franchise is contractually obligated to follow. Let us establish the factual foundation before we go any further. As tip-off approached for the Fever's highly anticipated home matchup against the brand-new Portland Fire at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, a sudden last-minute announcement completely removed Caitlin Clark from the active roster. The singular economic engine of the franchise, the player whose very name drives 99% of national broadcast interest. Sky-high secondary ticket pricing and historic road game attendance surges across the entire league, was suddenly declared unavailable just an hour before the game started. The official story leaked to local media referenced a sudden onset of back stiffness and positioned the benching as a conservative, medically responsible decision. The problem with that beautiful public relations story is that the WNBA's own rulebook makes that explanation impossible to sustain under close scrutiny. The collective bargaining agreement contains strict, non-discretionary language regarding injury reporting obligations. As documented by independent analysts across basketball social media, including the highly respected research compiled by the sports account known as Fantasy Doctor, WNBA franchises are legally required to submit their complete injury, illness, and rest designations to the league office by precisely 5 p.m. local time on the day preceding any scheduled game. This requirement is not a polite courtesy, it is not a casual recommendation, or a best practices guideline. It is a contractually binding obligation designed to maintain competitive integrity and protect the consumer base. The only exception written into that rule covers the second night of a back-to-back game scenario. But guess what? The Portland Fire game was absolutely not the second night of a back-to-back. The Fever had a clear calendar day to assess their roster, so the core question that the Indiana Fever front office must answer is incredibly simple. What did your official injury report, submitted by 5 p.m. the day before the Portland game, actually say about Caitlin Clark? The answer is an absolute zero. Nothing. No designation, no participation warnings, and no medical classifications. Clark did not appear anywhere on the mandatory pregame reporting documentation that the league requires franchises to submit. The real-world consequences of that intentional omission are devastating to everyday sports consumers. Secondary ticket marketplace prices for this specific game were massively inflated because families expected to see the league's biggest star. Hard-working parents across Indiana, Ohio, and neighboring states made long-distance travel arrangements, paid for hotel rooms, and spent hundreds of dollars on parking and food based on the well-founded assumption that the marquee player would be on the floor. The stadium parking lots collected the revenue. The concession stands sold out their expensive inventory. The official merchandise stores processed thousands of dollars in jersey sales. The tickets were scanned at the turnstiles. And then, only after all that cash was securely in the vault, did the public address system announce that Clark would not be playing. The timing of that announcement was not an accident. It is the absolute smoking gun of this entire institutional scandal. The collective bargaining agreement's reporting timeline exists specifically to prevent sports franchises from treating their own fans like financial marks. Why would a professional organization willingly accept the absolute certainty of a massive league fine rather than just comply with a simple reporting schedule? The mathematical calculation here is completely transparent, and the Fever front office knew exactly what they were doing. If Clark's absence had been reported transparently at 5 p.m. the previous day, every single revenue stream for Wednesday night would have suffered an immediate devastating drop. Season ticket holders would have stayed home. Casual fans planning to buy walk-up tickets would have paused. The secondary market values would have cratered instantly. The arena's announced capacity crowd simply would not have materialized. The franchise clearly calculated that paying a league fine for a reporting violation was significantly cheaper than losing out on a sold-out stadium's worth of midweek consumer spending. That is not a basketball decision made by a coaching staff. That is a calculated financial move executed at the executive level, and it deserves to be exposed for exactly what it is. But this massive reporting violation is only one layer of the darkness surrounding this team. The question of why Clark was actually unavailable points directly to a deep, toxic locker room division that the front office is desperately trying to cover up. The viral sideline footage from the game immediately preceding the Portland matchup requires absolutely no interpretation. It is completely visible, raw, and thoroughly documented. Head coach Stephanie White and assistant coach Brianne January were caught on camera engaging in an incredibly intense, physical, and emotionally charged interaction with Caitlin Clark, right on the sideline, during a timeout. In that footage, you can see Clark visibly and forcefully pushing away, disengaging from the staff, and firing back with a level of anger that goes way beyond normal in-game coaching communication. What the broadcast cameras captured was a generational superstar who had reached her absolute limit, responding with unambiguous body language that signaled a massive structural breakdown between the players and the staff. In the high-stakes world of professional sports, when an asset of Clark's commercial and cultural value has a public meltdown with the coaching staff, the top priority for a healthy front office is immediate de-escalation, open communication, and institutional resolution. You sit down, you talk out the philosophical differences, and you find a cohesive path forward. You do not engage in petty corporate retaliation. Yet, the photographic evidence leaked from the Fever's closed practice facility in the days following that sideline explosion tells a visual story that completely shatters the official back injury narrative. The images captured of Clark's physical positioning relative to the rest of the roster and coaching staff during that practice are incredibly telling. She was completely isolated, standing deep in the corner, thoroughly disengaged from the team drills, and structurally removed from the normal operational flow of a professional practice environment. That does not look like an athlete who is simply managing a minor physical ailment. When a basketball player is dealing with legitimate lower back tightness or general physical fatigue, they remain deeply integrated into the team's daily environment. They are on the baseline talking through the defensive coverages, they are working directly with the head athletic trainer on a treatment table right next to the floor, and they are actively engaged in the mental walkthrough of the playbook. What was photographically documented inside that facility looked like a corporate disciplinary timeout. It looked like an organization banishing their best player to the principal's office to teach her a lesson about challenging authority, completely disguised under the safe, unpunishable umbrella of medical precaution. When you combine the blatant failure to submit the mandatory league injury report with the exact timeline of that sideline shouting match and the eerie practice photos of Clark standing alone in the corner, the official narrative of a standard rest day completely falls apart. It simply cannot hold weight. The basketball result of Wednesday night's game is also being weaponized in a highly dishonest way by mainstream commentators. The Indiana Fever ended up defeating the Portland Fire by a score of 907-3. Almost immediately, the traditional sports media outlets began pushing a deeply flawed narrative, claiming that this game proved the Fever are actually more efficient, more ball dominant, and more structurally balanced when Clark isn't on the floor soaking up the entire offensive identity. Let me give you a massive reality check on that ridiculous argument. Look at the competition. The Portland Fire is a first-year expansion franchise. They are a brand new group of players thrown together through an expansion draft, completely lacking defensive infrastructure, personnel depth, or the institutional film room preparation required to stop a veteran WNBA core. Winning a home game against a bottom-tier expansion squad while your best player sits on the bench doesn't mean your alternative lineup is superior. It simply means your opponent was completely unequipped to expose your massive strategic flaws. If you actually watch the game footage instead of just reading the box score, the structural cracks are incredibly obvious. The ball movement was slow, the half-court sets were rigid, and the team lacked any form of dynamic transition offense. Aaliyah Boston had an incredible night with 24 points and 8 rebounds, and she deserves all the credit in the world for looking like her dominant self after coming back from her own leg injury. But beating up on an expansion team's interior defense doesn't solve the long-term puzzle of competing against elite organizations like the New York Liberty or the Las Vegas Aces. Furthermore, the broadcast footage of Gainbridge Fieldhouse during that win exposes an even deeper long-term threat to this franchise. The actual physical energy inside the arena was completely dead. The baseline noise floor, the organic fan engagement, and the baseline electricity that has come to define Indiana Fever home games over the past 2 years were entirely absent. What the cameras showed was a building full of thousands of people who had arrived expecting a high-octane historic basketball showcase and instead received a generic, slow-paced midweek game. You cannot manufacture an authentic sports atmosphere through clever marketing campaigns or loud arena speakers. Energy is generated by the trust relationship between a franchise and its community. When fans feel like they have been intentionally deceived just to get their ticket scans at the gate, that foundational trust relationship suffers deep, structural damage. You cannot heal that rift by pretending nothing happened or by hiding behind tight-lipped press conference deflections. It requires absolute transparency, public accountability, and a complete shift in organizational behavior. Right now, we are seeing absolutely none of those things from the leadership in Indianapolis. Seating area during third quarter run, 0:30 to 1:02. Head coach Stephanie White's own public media sessions have only added fuel to this raging fire, creating massive legal and compliance exposure for the franchise. When pressed heavily by reporter James Boyd regarding the timeline of Clark's injury and why she was completely missing from Tuesday's preliminary injury documentation, White offered a highly contradictory and defensive explanation. She claimed that not every single player who misses a practice session or gets a scheduled rest day needs to be placed on the official league injury report, stating firmly that the team fully expected Clark to play on Wednesday night. But that explanation completely violates the basic common-sense reality of how professional sports health tracking works. If a player is dealing with back stiffness so severe that they are physically unable to participate in a crucial team practice less than 24 hours before tip-off, leaving their name completely off the league-mandated injury report is a massive, clear-cut gamble. The WNBA injury reporting framework doesn't just govern the formal spreadsheet sent to the league office at 5 p.m., it also legally demands absolute consistency and accuracy in all public statements made by team personnel regarding player availability. When a head coach stands at a podium and delivers contradictory statements that completely conflict with the actual operational timeline of the training facility, they are handing the league office documentary evidence of a non-compliant reporting environment. The WNBA has both the clear authority and the urgent obligation to step in and investigate this exact situation. If the reporting system that protects betting market fairness, broadcasting partners, and everyday ticket buyers is going to have any real enforceable power, the league cannot allow a franchise to openly exploit these rules without facing severe historic sanctions. This entire disaster ultimately lands squarely on the shoulders of the Simon family ownership group, who find themselves sitting at the center of a massively consequential crossroads. In purely objective commercial terms, having Caitlin Clark under an active Indiana Fever contract is the single most valuable player-franchise alignment in the entire history of women's sports. The unprecedented television ratings, the immediate sellouts of national merchandise lines, the massive corporate sponsorship valuations, and the historic stadium attendance records across every single city this team visits are fully quantifiable numbers. Allowing a rigid, traditionalist coaching staff and an arrogant front office culture to systematically damage the personal and professional relationship between the organization and its ultimate franchise asset isn't just a poor basketball decision. It is an absolute catastrophic business failure. The long-term fallout is already beginning to show its face. Prominent league insiders are now reporting that Clark's posture regarding a long-term contract extension with the Indiana Fever has shifted from an expected certainty to a highly passive, deeply cautious holding pattern. She has reportedly declined to engage in early, aggressive extension conversations, choosing instead to preserve her full contractual optionality moving forward. In the cutthroat world of professional sports, when a generational franchise cornerstone refuses to lock themselves into a long-term commitment, It means they are sending a clear, loud message to the boardroom. It means the player is actively watching the chaos around them, evaluating the organizational culture, and concluding that the environment being built by the current front office might not be designed to maximize her unique talent and long-term success. The Indiana Fever currently have an incredibly narrow operational window to fix their internal culture, repair the broken trust with their fan base, and demonstrate that every single level of the franchise, from ownership down to the coaching staff, is fully aligned. That window is closing incredibly fast, and if they don't change course immediately, the ultimate price they pay won't just be a league fine. It will be watching the greatest talent in league history walk right out the door. That is my take on this absolute mess. But you already know I want to hear from the realest basketball minds in the world, and that is you guys down in the comments section. Do you believe the Indiana Fever front office intentionally hid Caitlin Clark's injury status to secure a sold-out gate against the Portland Fire? Or do you think this is just a case of terrible communication from a coaching staff trying to manage an internal locker room dispute? What kind of punishment should the WNBA hand down to ensure this kind of fan deception never happens again? Drop your raw thoughts, your breakdowns, and your theories below, because every single perspective in that comment section matters. If you want the most analytically rigorous, completely unfiltered, CBA-grounded coverage of everything happening across the basketball landscape, make sure you smash that like button right now, destroy the subscribe button, and turn on all your notifications so you never miss a single deep dive. This is your boy, Dre Fiver, signing off from Street Hoops. Keep it real, stay locked in, and I will see you all in the very next video.